For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. The markets in Asia Pacific were coping with the following because it was all rather difficult for them. Stocks in the United States had wavered ahead of what Jay Powell was saying about inflation in the United States. I'll come on to the detail of that. Biden is clearly eyeing higher taxes, and the Reserve Bank of Australia has just about finished raising its interest rates, and also the euro strengthened, supported by bets on the ECB raising interest rates even higher. So therefore, Hong Kong finished down about 2%. Worries about US inflation and interest rate rises there. Shanghai Composite down about 0.5%. I'm going to bring you to an overall view of China, which is coming out today from an economist called David Roach. He's quite well regarded. He's been talking to a number of financial channels. What he's saying is that the changing role of China and the fact that it's going to have to look inside itself for growth rather than outside, and also the way in which the US, India, and other countries are altering the way in which they're investing in tech, i.e. not necessarily in China, is going to change the way that China is looked at as far as the global economies are concerned. Doubts about investors rising, and also those the growth forecasts, which were relatively low, which I brought to you yesterday. 6G, do you know what that is? 6G. The mobile internet apparently will launch in 2030. This is a curious step up from 5G. I say curious because the take-up of 5G has been, I think, what the industry is describing as underwhelming at the moment. All that these Gs mean is that devices can talk to each other faster and faster and faster, and 6G apparently will be rolled out by 2030. But 5G itself, the stage below that, is nowhere near full acceptance. So let's talk about the United States and what Jay Powell was saying. Very, very clear that the doubt is now that the next rise in interest rates in the United States, which there will undoubtedly will be 0.5% rather than 0.25%. This is what's worrying the markets right now. Biden has also endorsed the TikTok bill. It gives, it's Chinese owned, obviously, TikTok. And it gives the US government the power to ban it completely if it feels that it's actually infringing US security. The fallout, I'm going to take you to India now. And again, the fallout from the Adani scandal. You remember this Adani, whose company, and of course, the company denies this completely, but nevertheless, it didn't stop the markets wiping a huge $140 billion off the 7 companies which comprise the Adani group. Now, the question that investors are asking themselves this morning, or have been asking overnight, is what effect will this have on India's economy as a whole? Because remember, the detractors of Adani are trying to prove links between Narendra Modi, who is the president of the Prime Minister of China, of India rather, and the fact that he's coming up for re-election this year, or election this year, and also because India is poised really on the brink, it hopes, of a certain amount of economic revival. So investors watching that very closely. I'm going to take you to the EU and big strikes in France now against the rise in the pension age. Those strikes have become violent, involving tear gas and so on, and also the populace don't like the fact that the new rules that Macron wants to introduce will mean that you need to have contributed towards a national pension for 43 years before you actually receive a full pension. And the cost of this, demographic shift rather, is eye-watering. You're looking at an annual deficit of 10.7 billion euro from 2022 to 2032. That's every year, that kind of deficit, unless something is done about this very expensive pension scheme that they have. The EU VW now, here's a shift for you. We've been talking about the subsidies war that Biden is clearly undertaking from the United States against Europe. VW is saying that it's going to start its new battery plant in South Carolina because of the subsidies it's getting, and that will cost VW $2 billion. But then again, that's where they're moving to, because they're seeing that the United States is subsidizing the building of electric vehicles very heavily indeed. And finally, as far as the EU is concerned, at least, Musk has been told not to moderate Twitter using artificial intelligence and the rest of it. He's got to hire human beings to do it. He won't, because human beings are fairly troublesome and also cost money as well. And this is all about moderating Twitter. This is all about policing the online content of Twitter and so on. And it's been so far it's been automatic moderation. Now the EU wants it tied to human moderators as well. So that's a further headwind as far as Twitter's advance into the EU area is concerned. To the UK, and you won't be surprised to learn that Jeremy Hunt, whose budget comes up on March the 15th, is being urged to help business. It looks like he might have shifted very, very slightly on that. There may be some kind of tax breaks. It looks like corporation tax will continue to rise. That proposal will still continue from 19 to 25%. But it means, and also that and it also means the super deduction, this thing which was giving capital investiture 130% of allowances, is now that's going to go away. So he's being very much encouraged to try to get some tax breaks going for business. The UK. Now, the RMT has suspended its rail strike, which is very good news. That was going to start on the 16th of March. Apparently, there's no more money on the table. The details aren't exactly clear, but working practices and the way it's which it was going to be 5% in 2023, and then 4% 2023 to 2024 in return for changing working practices. They're fiddling around with the edges of that. And so far, the RMT are being encouraged to take that back to their workers for a vote on that. And the UK, we've got a cold snap here. It's snowing outside as we speak. Very, very cold here. And emergency coal power stations have been called into play to cope with the cold snap, 2 of them. And there are 2 older ones as well, which may well be brought in over the next hours if the demand in electricity builds up massively. And finally, oil prices, a double hit, really. Jay Powell's comments about inflation keeping going, higher interest rates, lack of growth, all those kind of things, and also therefore a stronger dollar as well. And as you tend to buy oil in dollars, that's having an effect on the oil price as well. And I'm looking at the most recent projection for WTI, and it looks as though that will struggle to get above $80 a barrel in the near future. Never mind the fact that there are supply constraints as we speak. That's the global view.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Unfortunately, we're trying to manage time. Maybe tomorrow we'll have more time to talk about many of the issues you raised. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, all. I have to speed through this because of time. International Women's Day, there's going to be a high-level discussion between ECB President Christine Lagarde and Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Trade Organization. They're going to be talking about, I guess, women in the economy. There's a bit of a clique being formed here where you've got the 2 of them, Kristalina Georgieva, who heads the IMF, Ursula von der Leyen, who runs the president of the EU Commission. So you're seeing more prominent women in these places. And so this is pretty historic that we're going to be having this discussion with these 2 leaders. I wish the United States had nominated a woman for the World Bank to replace David Malpass, but it is what it is. We go to the theme for the International Women's Day for 2023, and it's about technology. And I was glad to see you guys talking about the issues with BVAS. There's been a whole tech discussion all through the day. So let's make digital technologies work for all with respect to scaling access. Inclusion is about access. When you talk about inclusive economic growth, and the issues with crony capitalism in Nigeria, for instance, the growth is not being felt by everyone. So in order for you to be part of this digital scaling, you've got to have access. So I think that's what a lot of folks are going to be talking about. With respect to businesses, the Fate Foundation, I was looking at a white paper that they had on supporting female-led SMEs, which came out last year. And they were showing data insights on the state of female-led businesses in Nigeria, and these particular states that had the highest number of female-led businesses: Gombe, Bauchi, Kwara, Oyo, Lagos, Edo, and Abia. Is it that the business conditions there are really, really attractive and a lot of women are going there to open businesses? Or is it high unemployment that is causing them to avoid corporate Nigeria and just do what they can to survive? But if that map is going to be scaled across the country, then the digital issue has to be discussed with respect to using technology to be able to scale your business, social media ads for you to be able to get awareness for your business, and also just being able to build stuff with that. There's also a value proposition value proposition that they also put up on their reports. At the right there, you see agility to digital literacy, and that refers to being nimble and flexible enough to be able to learn. Now, learning is part of this, which makes education part of this conversation as well. As far as digital literacy and access to tech, you've got to be able to learn the stuff. UNESCO's numbers for the number of children, girls out of school, 129 million of them, according to UNESCO. For Nigeria, you've got 6 million girls that are out of school, according to UNICEF. So there's an education component to this with respect to being able to lift these kids out of not being able to access education. Distance learning, the digital conversation goes there as well as far as girls are concerned. So it's a whole lot to be discussed with respect to technology for women, which what it means for business, what it means for education, and the like.
All right, Rotus, real quickly, great one. But the problem is, how can we now get women through the cultural barriers to scale into tech? I think that's the biggest conversation. In 2017, I wrote an article I was just showing Aya just now, where I started making the case for women in tech. Yeah. Because I have done a lot of work of putting women in tech. In fact, I put my own money to ensuring that women get to the tech, on the Technovation platform and things like that. Yeah. But the problem is the cultural antecedents, how we can start to break that mold, that cultural barrier mold, to ensuring that women can actually be engineers and they can be cool about it, and they can be tech entrepreneurs. So I'm looking forward to the day we're going to be having African Unicorn founded by women, doing very well out of the African continent, and kudos to every woman out there doing very great things on the African continent. Tons of women engineers doing great stuff.
Indeed. I think it's important to, first of all, acknowledge the achievements of those great women that you started with, who have been able to break the glass ceiling, and who have been able to show that in terms of ability, women can perform as best as men, and that competence is not a matter of gender. Now, talking about education, yes, that's very important, at all levels, because education empowers. It gives access to opportunities. When you talk about Okonjo-Iweala, Christine Lagarde, these are women who are accomplished intellectually on their own and who have the gravitas that nobody can question anywhere in the world. But with regard to the emphasis on digital equality, I think we need, as part of the solution, to place more emphasis on STEM, particularly for young ladies. Yeah. Education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yes. We can have a lot more in terms of gender, balancing in that space. Look at the tech space in Nigeria. And I'm quoting directly from the This Day editorial of today, This Day newspaper, titled Nigerian Women and the Tech Space. The editorial tells us that, look, the digital space, the tech space in Nigeria, the value is over $10 billion. Now, but in terms of representation, women are represented only to the degree of about 6%. And the editorial singles out some women within the tech space who have been able to distinguish themselves and says these are persons, that we should be celebrating on a day-to-day because they've been able to show that even in that tech space, Nigerian women can hold their own. Yeah. The other issue is to address this idea of gender disparity, this myth about male superiority. Yeah. Even when many of the men who are walking about as if they are tall masquerades, they are being fed by their wives. Indeed. Females, being head of many households, but in the public space, a man will hide under culture, he will hide under religion. The same man that will still go home and be fed by his wife. Yes. So we have to address the cultural barriers. And then, of course, we have to address gender stereotyping. So it's a whole cocktail of things. The society is changing. In the legal domain, in some communities now, it is wrong to say a female, a daughter cannot inherit. Right. That has been settled in some parts of Nigeria. And, it's no longer fashionable for a man to come and say that his wife is his property, like one funny lawmaker did recently in Nigeria.
Yeah.
He took 4 wives there as evidence that he's a very capable man. So it's such, those kind of prejudices that create problems.
Doctor, what about gentlemen of the press? The whole matter with gentlemen of the press.
Where there are ladies in the media.
Exactly.
Now.
So that means to also end as well.
But it's a social cultural thing.
Indeed, Doctor. Indeed.
Well, I'm very excited about this year's theme, digital equity. And the difference between that and equality is that when you talk about equity, it's providing the resources and opportunities that they need. So access and opportunity to digital tools, resources, and the likes. So it's not just about a level playing field. It's to ensure that women, at least in Nigeria or around the world, have the adequate resources and tools required to embrace digital.
Indeed.
Now, some of what has been mentioned by Dr. Rufai, very valid in terms of, and I love the fact that you show the statistics on the out-of-school children, particularly as it disproportionately affects women or girls in Nigeria. In 129 million across the world, 20 million is Nigeria's share, and that is perhaps underestimated. And then look at the chunk of that in terms of how many girls make up that number.
Yeah.
We have to do better, and it would only take deliberate effort. I applaud the work of women who have, carved their own space in the tech world. We have women like Odunayo Eweni, we have Nkembego, Oyewumi Ojo, we have women like Tomi Majakudumi who are raising, who have, gotten seed funding. But we can certainly do more. And we must start from the genesis. We must start from the foundation of education and ensuring that all girls have access to quality education. What does this mean? Like we said, challenging cultural stereotypes, challenging community bias, challenging, perhaps mindsets as to how we see women or the role or place of women in society. I was having a conversation as a round-off with, a fellow, a woman like myself, and we're talking about the many stereotypes and challenges that we face as women in different sectors and different categories.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, in Africa, it is possible. It makes economic sense to have digital equity for both men and women, and I hope that the next administration, because that's what we're looking forward to now, would embrace that very fully. Thank you very much, Rotis. And on that note, I say Happy International Women's Day to all the women who are watching and great women who are breaking biases across the world.